Hey, welcome everybody back to another episode of the Big Doug and Carmi Show. You one-stop shop for all things Commanders. That's right, Commanders. You heard it. We've been saying it for a long time. It's here to stay. We'll talk about all that today. Maybe Myles Garrett was in the news today. We might talk a little bit about him. And every Monday we'll be doing mock drafts from here on out till April. So today we'll be doing one of those for the first time. Our guest today from the Sports Junkies is our good buddy Cakes. Cakes, what's happening, man?
What's up? Thanks for having me. Good to see you guys.
Absolutely. Always love having you on. George, we haven't done the birthday game in a while, a fan favorite. We'll fire her up here today. I've got 5 celebrities with birthdays this week, and we'll see how close you boys can get.
All right.
Shakira has a birthday this week.
Shakira
has a birthday this week. How old? Cakes, we'll start with you.
Shakira's been in the game for a while.
Yes,
I'm gonna say Shakira is 41 today.
I gotta watch what I gotta say about Shakira because I think she's absolutely gorgeous and I'm married, so I gotta watch myself with that. She had a fantastic show yesterday too. I think she's older than that though. I think she just doesn't age. I think she's a fine wine. I'm guessing 50. I think she's like about I say 48. I'll say 48.
Okay.
George nailed it. She's 48 this year. So am I. Good
Looks
for
great
Shakira.
for 48.
She's way better at 48 than I do.
Shakira's gonna like my guess better than George.
Absolutely.
Yes, that's right.
Delicate balance.
Something tells me she's not going to see this, but
Yes.
I don't know. Maybe she's a big Commanders fan. I don't know.
She's a huge fan of the Big Doug and Carmi show. I've been told several times.
Sure.
Please, kids, come on. Bobby Brown has a birthday this week. Bobby Brown. It's his prerogative. How old is he?
It's his prerogative. Now, he's been in the game a lot longer than Shakira.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's right.
I mean, New Edition was big like when I was 12 or 13, and he had to be like, so I'm 54. Bobby Brown is 66.
You got to do deductive reasoning, right? So he's big in the 80s. He's probably 20 in the 80s. Add 30 more years to that. Or actually, you're right, 40 more years to that. Wow, that's not that long. So, yeah, he's probably 62.
56.
56.
56.
Okay. Sorry, Bobby.
And I think he was. Bobby
Brown is only 2 years older than I am.
Yeah. Because those guys were only like 14 or 15.
That's true. I'm
making
them. Yeah, you know what? I'm making them older than I thought they were when they were 2 years older than me. That's
crazy.
Absurd.
That's crazy.
That is
crazy. The legend.
I suck at this game apparently. This isn't funny because I'm getting my ass kicked.
The legend Tom Brokaw has a birthday this week. First of all, I didn't realize Tom Brokaw was still alive, but indeed he is, and he has a birthday this week.
You want to go first this time, George? You know, I need to switch up my mojo. You go first.
I'll give it a whirl, man. So Tom Brokaw, man, he's always been like, I've always viewed him as a senior for many, many years now. I got to put him like in the 70s, like 74. Is that underselling him or? I
think he's older. I think he's older than that.
Okay.
You have him 74. I think he's like he might be in his early 80s. Or again, I could just be way off base because I've been way off base with the first two guesses. I'm gonna stick with my gut though. I'm gonna go with Brokaw 81.
85 for Brokaw.
There you go. I was way off on that one.
85.
Okay.
Right.
There you go. Warming up.
Let's see. 2 more here. Garth Brooks has a birthday this week.
Love Garth Brooks.
This was an interesting one. I was surprised.
I don't know much about Garth Brooks. I'm going to be honest. Other than he sold an F ton of records back in the day.
He's got to be. He was huge in the 90s. He was crushing it in the 90s. I'd assume
they had to count that Central Park concert by like license plates and people per acreage. They didn't even know how many people went to that thing. It was crazy.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, my brother loved Garth Brooks, and I used to listen to him as in my teens. So he's probably, I'd say 20 in the 90s, add 30 more years to that, 55. I'd say 56 for Garth Brooks.
Again, I think he's older than that. Oh, did you?
I did. My bad. I thought you'd already said 63 for Garth. My fault.
I was going to say like 67 or 66. I think was my lean. But
the last one here is Ashton Kutcher. Ashton Kutcher has a birthday this week.
I think he's younger than me. I think he's a little bit. He's close. I would say he's about I don't know. Didn't he date Demi Moore for a while too? That guy, I'm so jealous of
Yeah,
him.
he was married to her for a while.
Was he married to her for a while?
Yeah.
He's probably like, I'd say, I was like kind of robbing the cradle there. I'd say probably about 37. I think he's a little bit younger. He was young when he was dating her, wasn't he? Like real young.
Yeah, but I think he's older. I think he's older than that. I'm going to put him on. He's 41.
47.
47.
Wow, we're both way off.
Yeah, both way off. Good for him. He looks young, actually. There you go.
Yeah. You know what? The next time I'm on the show, I might have to just come on 10 minutes late and not do the birthday game or bone up on my birthdays. One of the two.
Yeah, exactly.
George has routinely been good at the birthday game. When Pooh was still on the show, Big Pooh was fantastic at the birthday game. He would nail those things. I don't know how. All right. Commanders in the news today. 4 Commanders. Before we get to the name stuff, one of the things that I thought was notable is how transparent and open Josh Harris has been, something we never saw in 20, 30 years with the previous guy. So just that was such like a breath of fresh air today to have a guy come out. Obviously, there were certain things he wasn't going to answer. He can't answer stuff he doesn't know about via the stadium or when it moves, but things he could answer, he did. One of those was the name change, and he got asked early, and he kind of did the same thing he did last time. He kind of gave an answer, but didn't give an answer. I think Steve Wino towards the end from the Post ends up saying, is it safe to say Commanders isn't going anywhere? And he says definitively, yes, it's not going anywhere, which I was glad, because after the first comment, I still saw people all over the timeline talk about, well, that wasn't a no, that, it may still happen. I think 2 things happen in George. We've talked about this all the time. They won a lot of football games this year and sold a lot of number 5 jerseys with Commanders on it. There was no need financially to dump $20 million into finding another name, which is essentially what they spent last time. I'm not saying that I think Commanders is the best name, but figuring out a way to evolve the brand now, I think, is more important than switching to a name that half the fan base probably still won't like, because really the fan base that doesn't like the Commanders essentially are the old Redskins fans that will never like anything other than the Redskins.
Mm-hmm.
The younger generation that I talked to, none of them are complaining about the Commanders. That feels like an old guy thing. George, I think we saw this coming.
Yeah, Doug, I think you nailed it, right? I think going into this, I think Josh Harris had his word. I think he is an honorable person. I think he has a pulse of the fan base. I think he walked into the team last year not knowing if he was going to change the name, right? I think he was like, hey, it's not a priority. We're going to figure out what's going on with the team first. We have to fix FedEx Field first. And I think he said, make our house a home. Like, you have to renovate the stadium and make it nicer in that regard. Look at a new stadium as well. I think it was trial and error. Like, you know what? The Commanders were under Dan Snyder. He was wildly unpopular. How are the fans going to receive it if I am the actual owner? Let's kind of get our metrics, our data under control, and kind of roll it out that way, right? I think the equation changed when they got Jaden Daniels and he accelerated the process. Nobody expected this season to happen, right? We essentially went from 4-13 last year to 12-5 this year. The team just took off like a rocket. Jaden Daniels is going to be the face of the league next year. Like, he's going to be like on these posters. It's going to be Josh Allen and Burrow, and Jaden Daniels will be up there. And the jerseys took off. And I think at that point he was like, you know what? The money's there. The team is getting, we're 12-5. There's a renewed sense in the fan base. Why hit the reset button and start everything now? Because no matter what we do, guys, it's going to be unpopular. I think the Redskins is the only name that could unanimously support, everyone can get around. But I think nationally, it would be kind of a hotbed topic too. Like, maybe in the DMV, people would love the name Redskins, but, California or New York are very politically opinionated states might still give us a hard time for going back to that name over there. So I think I take him for what his word is. I think that, the Commanders, I'm just happy that he made a flag in the sand. Here we go. Let's move forward and see where we go from here. So that's my takeaway from today.
I've been firmly on the side of that they should change the name, just because, like Doug referenced, Commanders, not a very good name, kind of hastily, in my opinion, a hastily put together name to replace Redskins by the former regime that was on its way out, led by Jason Wright. I think Jason Wright did a lot of good things while he was here, but the unveiling of Commanders was not one of those good things. I mean, we saw how poorly it was executed. And I've just thought that if you're Josh Harris and company and all those smart guys that he has as minority owners along with him, like if you're stuck with a bad name, that you would just eventually rebrand it. Now, I give him credit for coming out today and saying, look, we're just not going to do it. It's not something that is a priority for us. There are good things happening around the Commander's name, and we're going to go with that going forward. So at least there's some clarity now as far as what the name is. And even though I think the name is not very good, at least there's not going to be the distraction of we're going to name the team, or that specter of renaming the team hanging over the franchise, until they get the new stadium over the next few years. It's just one less thing to worry about. I've got a few bets in with the fellows from the Junkie Show that the name would be changed before the 2027 season. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. Looks like I'm going to be paying out some bets. But look, if the team doesn't want to go in a different direction, if they don't want to have the fourth different name in 5 or 6 years, I can understand that. But yeah, again, give Josh Harris and the ownership group credit for addressing it straightforward, being transparent about it, and then moving on to more important things for them.
Doug, can I say one thing real quick, if you don't mind? I think the hard part about the whole name change, me being born and raised in DMV, I live in Moco right now. I think the reason why it's so hard for people to embrace the new name is because the name was taken away from us, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't like a relocation. We didn't go to a different city or rebrand or, things of that regard. It was like, politically, financially, the, minority stakeholders, the name got taken away. So I think that there's always that level of disgust of, it got stripped from us as opposed to being a relocation. That's always going to hurt. So that's one thing there. And, I just don't know what to do. I don't think the problem is the next step is what name would unite everybody. I think that's the biggest concern, big picture for me. If we were going to rename something, what would it be? What could unite everybody? So that's my thought there.
Yeah, I think people will forget also that it was not a clean name before it was stripped away. There were protests at a lot of games. It was not easy sledding those last 5 years before they eventually, before everybody got woke for a year or two. And yes, the name then went away and they were going to take away the branding rights from FedEx and they were clamped on. But I'll say this, people don't like to hear it, but yes, Dan Snyder was there when they went to Commanders, but I will always remember Dan Snyder more for the Redskins than I will for whatever the Commanders is. If the Commanders take off in year 2, which they did, and went to a conference championship, and they have this young phenom that is outselling everybody else's jerseys of any sport in America right now, going forward, people will remember the command. If this is the trajectory of the organization, in 20 years, people will remember the Commanders with Josh Harris, Dan Quinn, Adam Peters, and Daniels, and hopefully a Super Bowl along the way. That's the important thing. And then as far as the logo goes, I never personally, and you know this, George, I never personally had a problem with the logo. I can see where Redskins was offensive. If you want to go down that road, that's fine. I can get there. The logo to me was never offensive. It was respectful. And there are other humans on helmets, if you will, as far as that goes. So I didn't find
I agree with
that disrespectful.
Yeah.
Now, bringing the logo back now, frankly, makes no sense to me. I have no idea what Native American imagery would have to do with a commander.
No.
So, that to me feels
now they may not bring the logo back, maybe as a one-off for nostalgia to sell on Fanatics, whatever.
Sure.
I understand that, but they've kind of made reference and hinted at that they're going to maybe tweak the uniforms to go back and look more like Redskins era uniforms. And I think that would be a smart move by Josh Harris and the marketing people. The experimenting with the uniforms has been kind of wonky. It's been a little bit off, I don't know if it's sat very well with the fan base. And I think going back to some of those more iconic traditional looks is something you're probably going to see reintroduced over the next few years, however they can work it out time wise.
Yeah, I posted an edit today that kind of had the old burgundy Joe Gibbs jersey on it. It's not bad. I saw your post, George, and I kind of agreed. I actually, interesting enough, I kind of like the new burgundy jerseys. Those aren't a problem for me. Actually like the yellow lettering instead of the white lettering. And the biggest thing for me this year, and you could see it from game one to the end of the season, is they basically X'd out those white pants and went yellow pants. And like, to me, if that's what we're talking about, is like tweaks to get back to something that we remember, like yellow pants and the stripes, I think goes a long way to having some folks, like, people don't like the white jerseys. So maybe you keep the current burgundy jerseys, but bring back the old white jerseys if people like those. I love those 21st anniversary white jerseys. They could do something like that. Cakes, to your point, they do an alumni weekend once a year. Like, to me, that's when you bring back like the old spear helmet and that uniform tweak just a little bit. And that's how you get the old in once a year. They have an extra option. They have they've got a third helmet they could use. They didn't do that this year. It was interesting that Mike Callow was talking with Bram the other day, and Mike's one of these super uniform guys. Apparently, because Nike was around when they went to Washington football team, the jerseys were still the Redskins jerseys then. They just put Washington across the front. Yeah. And as long as Nike still has it in the catalog, it doesn't count as like being a redo. You can go straight back to those because Nike still has them. So that would be interesting. So there are ways to tweak these things without having to wait the 5 years. And they've got enough room left in there that they can do that. People have suggested, I know you guys remember like a decade, 15 years ago, they were doing black jerseys before we had the black jerseys for Sean Taylor. And those jerseys, I believe, had red. That was a red with the yellow around it. And those pop, you could do that a little bit. And they had the same kind of red and yellow on the sleeves. So there's definitely ways to fix it without having to blow the whole thing up, because I don't think you want to do that. They have obviously sold enough of the current jerseys that you don't want to totally do it again, because I think that's what pisses people off, is like, now I've got to go do it again. I don't want to do it. I now have Redskin stuff. I've got Washington football team stuff. I got Commander stuff. Like, I don't want any more stuff.
But at least the cool thing now is, like, for years it used to be, well, whose jersey would I buy?
Yeah.
Whose jersey am I going to buy? A Chase Young jersey? You know, like, you could buy a Terry McLaurin jersey. Okay, he's going to be here. But, you know, now you can buy, like, you can buy a Jaden Daniels jersey, and you're confident that that jersey is going to be there for a decade. Now you can buy 1, 2, 3 of them, but like for years, we talked about this on the Junkie Show for so many years. Like, you used to go out to bars and we used to do pregame shows, and like you wouldn't see like current whatever iteration name of the team was at that point. You'd always see old Riggins, you'd see Theismann, you'd see all the throwbacks, but you wouldn't see like the current players, because there weren't enough stars or players that people would gravitate towards, that they'd say, yeah, I'm going to go spend $120 on a replica or $250 on an authentic, like, for a guy who might not be here in 2 years. So at least now they've got at least 2 guys where you can go out and plunk down your money on the jersey and know they're going to be here for the long term. Obviously, in Jaden and Terry McLaurin, and that's a great thing for this team, no matter what their name is.
As someone who has a graveyard of jerseys, I definitely can agree with that 100%. I have a Rocky McIntosh jersey, Jamin Davis jersey. I have horrible collections in my closet right now.
There's nothing sadder than the franchises like the Browns and then the Commanders before Jaden, where the guys just have 30 different starting quarterback jerseys lined up, and it makes for a good viral Twitter bit. But you just look at those names, you're just like, oh my God, I can't believe, you know, the Browns fan base and the Commanders fan base has had to endure this for so many years. You just can't find the right guy. Thankfully, now they've got the right guy.
Behind me on the wall, I have an Emmanuel Forbes signed mini helmet. Nice. I have a Montez Sweat signed mini helmet, and it's like, you know, you would have thought that those were first rounders and they were safe picks to have. So it maybe Adam Peters will allow us to buy some stuff because they draft well.
And let me say,
Yeah, if you have a bunch of Ron Rivera first round picks, mini helmets, those are trash, my friend.
Those are trash, 100%.
Those are worth a tenth of what you bought them for.
I think one other component, I think, with the old jerseys and kind of like representing the team, you want pride in your team, right? Like I know Kicks are a big Caps guy. It's just fun watching Backstrom and Ovi, just proud of them and the success that they had, right?
Sure.
Over the last 20, 30 years, the Redskins didn't give you anything to be proud of. And I feel bad to say that. They're my favorite thing in the world. I love that team. But like it'll be scandal after scandal, bad losses, injuries, so many things that would be caught up in the news. Wearing a jersey was almost like a target, right? Especially if you go walk into like the NFC East bar and stuff like that. You weren't proud of what you had. What I'm happy with this year is finally we're getting some pride. We actually have a rising star that we're proud of. We made some progress in the playoffs. We won 2 games. I think we're finally starting to get some momentum. So I think we have this new era of fans that are excited. The people that were dormant for a very long time now back into it again. And I think Cakes and Doug, as you mentioned, just kind of revamping these jerseys and giving that nostalgia factor again will be a great marriage of nostalgia from the past, these old jerseys. Like I want to watch something I feel comfortable watching and visually seeing, as well as these new shining stars. I think it's just going to be, I'm just happy to get the momentum on our side again because it was gone for a very long time.
Yeah, and I don't think like nationally, I think the people that make fun of the name, like the commies and things like that, are actually just fans of the team, right? Like I don't think that is a national thing. I don't hear national people like saying how bad the name sucks. I just think it's people that are invested in the team, and that's okay. They have every right to. I mean, you put your life into the team and you're frustrated with what you're calling them now. I respect that. It doesn't mean the same to me as it does many other fans. I'm not here to tell people how to fan. That's not my job. I just think the conversation is interesting, and I'm just glad that the man finally came out and said, "Listen, as a fan base, this is the team." And he said that the team is supposed to unite the DMV, not tear it apart because of what we call it. And I'm glad that he just put his foot down and said, "This is not important to us. The name's fine. The people we've talked to suggest that the name's fine, and it's not changing." And I think that's one of the biggest things that we got out of today, and I really appreciated that. Moving to a little something different, it kind of is in the same vein, though. It will be interesting. It used to be, and you fellas know this, that every offseason the Redskins would be linked to every big free agent name simply because Dan Snyder would open his pocket up and fly Redskins one to wherever it was and make sure they got them. It never worked. This offseason, the Commanders are going to be linked to every big name free agent and trade partner that there is. And that's because the team is in a rookie quarterback window with aspirations of Super Bowls. And those big name free agents are looking at the Commanders as a destination to get to, rather a place to get get paid. And that to me is the second biggest thing that we learned today, is that they might have said it, but nationally you can see that we are now going to start getting linked to these players. George, they've linked us to T. Higgins. I've said no, thank you. They're linking us to Myles Garrett. I say to that, yes, please.
I'm right there. I'm right there with you. I honestly, for me, I think a wide receiver is the utmost importance. I think Washington needs more offensive talent because it is throwing at the Terry McLaurin.
People asked me last week when I suggested T. Higgins might get $40 million a year. Now 40 might be a little bit high, but I'm telling you, he's coming in at 32.
He's going to get $30 million.
Easy.
If you throw money out the window, which is a ridiculous thing to even say out loud, if you throw money out the window, T. Higgins would be a great fit for our team. He's a downfield threat. He is a jump ball wide receiver, great route runner. He plays with he plays with Jamar Chase, so he has an alpha right next to him. He knows how to balance that act. But I do think that's a lot of money for a wide receiver. And honestly, if you want to balance the books, you always want to draft a wide receiver. They're coming up better, more well-rehearsed from high school and college up moving forward. So I would love T. Higgins. I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I don't know if it's financially makes sense, right? So I'll say that. Garrett Wilson's appealing as a rookie. He's still on his rookie contract. Getting him, I wouldn't mind trading potentially even our number 29 overall pick or a second-round pick for Garrett Wilson. I'm not mad at that. Myles Garrett would be a game changer in my opinion, right? Like I know he's a little bit older, but I think he's like a 6-time or 8-time All-Pro. He is a veteran. He's a run stopper.
14 sacks each in the last 4 years.
Jesus. So 14 seconds to last. I mean, that's like Dexter Manley numbers right there. That's fantastic. I love that, right? So Now, in addition to that, he's a great run stopper. He sets the edge, is what we need. So I think he would be a tone setter, and you can't solve all of your issues in the draft. So maybe pursuing Myles Garrett would be a great fit for us, and having him, and I like Bobby Wagner, having him back as a veteran in the center, the center of our defense as well, could really go a long way. So I have no problem getting Myles Garrett. I know, money is not my money, so they're more than welcome to spend it any way they want.
The early numbers suggest a new contract for Myles Garrett upon trade is 4 years, $137 million.
Was that $30 million a year, something like that, 35? I mean, that's the price of doing business, Doug. So you have that there.
Yeah, like if you want an elite pass rusher, that's the going rate. And I agree with you, George. Like they definitely need wide receiver help. Like it was fine to try to cobble together the number 2 wideout spot with Zacchaeus, bring in Noah Brown, De'Ami Brown pop toward the end of the season. But if I'm Adam Peters, I just need to make that number 2, 3, and 4 wide receiver spots. I need to have more talent. Like I can't just keep looking for cast-offs or one-year deals for guys. And I trust that Peters will be able to build that through the draft. And maybe he signs a lesser free agent than T. Higgins. He doesn't splurge
like Amari Cooper.
Yeah, like somebody like that's going to come in at a cheaper price tag that works for the system. So I would expect that instead of a big splashy T. Higgins acquisition. But if you can add Myles Garrett to this defense, and he's a guy that can get you upwards of 13, 14, 15 sacks, and he's good against the run too, like Doug mentioned, he's not just sorry to point a finger. He's not Dante Fowler, who's great who's going to disrupt the quarterback, but isn't very good against the run. So I wouldn't mind that being the splurge with the cheap rookie quarterback. That's something that, we saw the Houston Texans do that. They went out and got Stephon Diggs because they still have Stroud on a rookie deal. Like I would expect the same sort of big move from Peters, not necessarily for a wideout, but one premier piece at least. And maybe that is Myles Garrett, because he would make this defense look a lot better. Certainly.
You know what helps Jaden Daniels is the defense not giving up 55 points in a championship game. Or all the points they gave up in other games. That also would help the quarterback, believe me. And those guys just don't become available most of the time. Right. Now I'll say this, and I find it interesting. It's something like a $36 million dead cap hit for the Browns. And they've still got all their other dead cap problems with the quarterback. So I don't even know that they can afford to do it. I saw something that it would take like reworking the quarterback, reworking the cornerback ward. It would take cutting Conklin from the O-line and other things. So whether it's even feasible for them, I have no idea. But my understanding is this wasn't like a please trade me so he can get a new deal in Cleveland. Right. He wants to win, and it is becoming obvious that at least nationally, people think that Washington is one of those places you can now go and become a piece that helps them win big games. And Cakes, damn it, that is exciting.
Getting back to the Browns for a second, excuse me if I'm not going to shed a tear, because they completely harpooned their own salary cap.
Yeah,
I'm making one of the worst deals ever in acquiring
100%.
Deshaun Watson. Like that,
100%.
That is completely on them. Like they made their own bed. Now they have to work their way out of it. I mean, just what a disastrous add to that team. I mean, they thought he was going to completely revamp their offensive fortunes. We know how that story has played out. Not only is he clearly bad off the field, he's not producing on the field.
Terrible.
Like his on-field production is dreadful. Like
they got rid of Baker Mayfield for Deshaun Watson. How crazy is that?
I mean, that move probably sets that franchise back a decade.
Yeah,
and that's not hyperbole. That's sort of disastrous quarterback acquisition will have them behind the 8 ball for a long time. So that's their mess to get out of. But yeah, like the bigger takeaway is the Commanders are now, they're a destination, whereas they used to be a place to go get paid. A guy who's toward the end of his career, in the twilight of his career, gets paid because the owner, knows who he is and wants to lavish money on him. Those days are over. Now you have a young stud quarterback that people want to play with, that realize that this team is on the come, and it's an attractive free agent landing spot, which is a weird thing to say after, the Junks have been on the air for 28 years, and Washington has never been a premier free agent landing destination. It's a place that people like avoided like the plague. Like, remember just a few years back, they had to acquire Carson Wentz because none of the other free agent quarterbacks would give Washington a sniff. Like, Russell Wilson wasn't coming here. This is not. I'm glad that. Like,
thank God they turned those 3.
You go back to that proposed deal, 3 first rounders for Russ, and why did the Seahawks not do that deal? I don't know what they were thinking, but yeah, like the Commanders were forced to acquire Carson Wentz because he had no say in it. He had no power over where he went.
Right.
Like it's such a 180 from those days now that Jaden Daniels is the quarterback. He's going to be here for a decade. Like, good offensive players are going to want to come here and play with Jaden Daniels. And that hasn't been a dynamic here for 3 decades.
No, Jaden's going to get a lot of people paid over the next 10 years, hopefully longer that he's here in Washington. You can already see the effect by how many of these folks in the coaching and front office are getting interviewed by other places, like other than the random, Sean McVays and KOCs. When has that ever happened here?
I mean, the coaching salaries they're just going through the roof. I mean, the report yesterday was that Chip Kelly is getting paid $6 million a year to be the offensive coordinator for the Raiders. Like, what's Cliff Kingsbury worth at this point?
Yeah.
I mean, he's just Cliff Kingsbury's doing this. Like,
how crazy is it?
I can't believe what's happening here.
How crazy is it? Cliff apparently wanted an extra year on his deal. The Raiders wouldn't give it to him. I think the Commanders had planned on hiring Chip Kelly last year. He's one of the guys they brought in. And instead, at the last minute, the Raiders said, no, we're not going to give you the 5th year on your contract or whatever it was for Cliff. Yeah. They let him go, and here he is in Washington. And George is just crazy because how many people did we talk to that laughed and poo-pooed the idea of Cliff Kingsbury as a functional offensive coordinator for the Commanders? We must have had a dozen.
Everybody from NFL media or any big shot that we interviewed, they were like, "Hey, you know what? He's gonna hit a cliff. The cliff. Kept on hearing about that over and over again." Yeah,
and I think great move by him to stay for this at least the second year. Like, you knew that it was only down to the Saints' job. Like, he wasn't taking the Saints job. Why would you leave Jaden Daniels and this ecosystem to go deal with Derek Carr, Alvin Kamara, who's about to turn 30, Chris Olave is their top wideout. I mean, he's had repeated concussion issues. They have real salary cap issues down in New Orleans. Like, once I saw that was the last team, I was like, "There's no way he's leaving here for that situation." I mean, he's already getting he's double dipping with his paychecks with the Commanders and the Cardinals. He's in no rush to leave here. He gets to up his stock and work with Jaden for another year. It's like a no brainer that he was going to stay.
And he's not the only one. Like, because of Brian Johnson a little bit, it has become more reasonable to do that. And to your point, Kate, probably because the money keeps going up. But like Todd Monken in Baltimore had options and decided, you know what, I think I'll just stay here with the MVP and see what we can do rather than going to Jacksonville or Las Vegas or someplace that's not really settled.
I didn't see what Monken signed for. It's kind of hard to find out what like OC.
It is. You're right.
They keep that money like down low. But if Chip Kelly got $6 million, I would guess Monken. What's Monken making? 4.5, 5? Like, that's pretty good scratch to be an OC. And then like his next step, he's going to get it. Probably he's going to double his pay when he becomes a head coach somewhere. It's crazy. Good for them.
George, before we get out of here, I would like to run through one of these mock drafts. If you go ahead and pull that up.
Sure.
Cakes, while he's doing that, briefly, Ovi his name just got thrown out randomly here earlier in the show. Is he the greatest DC sports athlete?
Ovi?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Look, people come at me with Sammy Baugh and Walter Johnson. Okay, well, it's fine. Okay. Ovi is doing it. He's going to break the greatest record in the NHL, which people thought was unbreakable, in the modern era, okay, Walter Johnson, I don't know. I can't speak to him that much. I don't know. This might rankle some of any old heads that might be out in the audience, but I'm sorry. I never saw Walter Johnson play. Sorry. I never saw Sammy Ball. I'll frame it as this. He's the greatest athlete that any of us have ever seen play in Washington. And I mean, at least the three of us on this pod right now.
Absolutely.
Like he is the greatest goal scorer in NHL history. And he's about to knock off a guy who nobody ever thought that record was approachable. And he's about to get to it. So yeah, I mean, to me, he's the greatest athlete that's played in Washington that we've ever seen.
I agree wholeheartedly. And you could probably speak more to it. I'm a DC sports guy. You're a Capitals guy, so you're definitely more into it than I am. But from what I gather, he is like the Kobe Bryant of the NHL, right? He's like the most lethal assassin, offensive weapon in the history of the game. And he just happens to play in DC, which is fantastic. Yeah. So we can't hate on that whatsoever. So I think he's the best by far.
And you know what also goes flies under the radar for Ovi is how physical of a player he is. Look at how many hits he's registered during his NHL career. I think he's top 3 all time. Now, part of that's longevity, but like he not only scores, like he is a physical presence out on the ice. Now, has that slowed down a little bit as he's gotten older? Sure. But I mean, for him to be number 1 overall in goals scored, which he will get, whether it's this season or the next, he's on pace for it this season. And for him to be top 3 all time in hits, like it just shows that he's not just a goal scorer. Like he contributes in other parts as well. And I know a lot of Ovi detractors like to just say, well, all he does is sit in his office and blast shots on goal. It's like, okay, well, that's a pretty good skill. It's a pretty good skill set to have. Like you need to score goals.
You play to win the game. Yeah, for sure.
He's the best at it. So
yeah.
It's been great being able to watch him. And look, if you have a chance to go see Ovi in person, whether it's at Capital One or it's cool to see, like when the Caps were on the road, like in the Ottawa game the other night, there were a ton of Caps fans in the stands. There were a bunch of Caps fans in the Seattle arena when they were on their West Coast swing about 10 days ago. So, like people that live in Washington, it's not only transient into Washington, people that live in Washington filter out across the country, and they're getting to watch Ovi in all the different arenas chase down Gretzky. It's pretty cool to see.
Very cool.
Real quick before you get this thing fired up, I'm curious, Cakes, for those of us that have just been solely focused on football, this has been a sneaky good season for the Caps so far, right? What do you make of this?
Yeah, it's been awesome. I mean, Coach Carberry, if he doesn't win Coach of the Year, I don't know what's going on. Like he inherited a team, like he took over a team where a lot of the pundits and the experts were thinking, well, this is going to be an OV like chasing Gretzky goal celebration, but don't expect a lot as far as on ice playoffs. So in year 1, he leads them to the playoffs. Now they get swept by the Rangers, but making the playoffs was kind of the victory for him and the team there. Nobody saw what they were going to do this year before this season started, but some of the acquisitions they made, especially Logan Thompson swinging that deal to pick him up from Vegas and platoon him and Lindgren in net. I was a little bit skeptical about that heading into the season, but it's been a masterstroke, and Thompson has been awesome. I mean, he's been like top 3 or top 4 in goals against, save percentage, wins. They reward him with a 6-year extension, which makes all the sense in the world. You got a really good goalie, lock him down. Chikrin's been a big pickup from Ottawa. The defensemen have been scoring at a much higher clip than last year. And look, they're scoring a lot more goals. Like last year was a struggle to put pucks behind goalies, and that's not the issue this year. So, I mean, they've got scoring, they've got solid defensemen that can score, and a really good goalie tandem. I mean, you have to like their chances heading into the postseason. It's been a really fun ride at this point.
Awesome ride.
All right, let's get in this draft thing here, George. We after the draft, we always do fantasy football, and people ask us about why you start so early. But when you do it that way, and you do those mock drafts, or you do, the underdog where it's, just pick the players, you kind of get an idea of where guys will fall in range. So Obviously, every Wednesday we do draft stuff. Every Monday we're going to start doing mock drafts, kind of use what we've learned from Wednesdays. This will be the first one, so we're just getting started. Most of us won't know a lot of the players in this range, but it'll give us an idea for what positions are there. People want left tackle right away at 29. That doesn't mean there's going to be left tackles available. So this will be a decent way to get started and see what should be around in each of these rounds.
Yeah, it's a good way to put our toes in the water. Just like you said, Doug, I'm looking for a tackle right now. I don't know what you guys are looking for in particular. I think the wide receiving class is deep. I think the running back class is deep. So I think there's some leeway there. But you're right. The tackles are hard to get. People want to get them in the top 10 of the draft. They very rarely become free agents. So we'll see what happens here. So let's get it started. Let's hit play and let's see how the board falls.
I can tell you what I don't want is a left tackle that could play left tackle, but also maybe could play guard. I don't want any more of those. I want tackles. You know what I want? I want to do what the Packers used to do, and that was just draft nothing but tackles and move them to guard. But they could play tackle if you need them to play tackle. I'm tired of that.
Hold on, Doug. You don't want the positional flex like Ron?
Yeah. I'm done with position flex.
Kept talking about, kept hyping
for the rest
up.
of my life.
You're way over that.
Exactly. So reflecting on the board, Cam Ward's going number 1 pretty often now. Seeing Travis Hunter, Shador Sanders top of the board. McMillan's a pretty tall wide receiver from Arizona. Abdul Carter falls to 5. He's a beast on Penn State as an edge rusher over there. Ashton Jeanty, people love him as a running back. People are connecting Luther Burden, the Missouri wide receiver, to Washington, but he's going top 15 in a lot of drafts that I'm seeing now as well. Emeka Ibuka from Ohio State. Tyler Warren, the Penn State tight end, as well as off the board. So Omar Hampton as well, another running back from North Carolina. So we're seeing a lot of the bigger names that are being talked about in D.C. coming off the board. And we're sitting there at 29 with an edge player, a tackle from Oregon. We're starting to see some linebackers here as well, a cornerback. I guess, Doug and Cakes, is there a position that you're looking for at number 29?
I mean, if I'm Peters, I'm probably looking for either, and it's the two that are listed there. I'm looking for the best edge rusher or tackle that slips to me at that point. Or, I wouldn't be surprised if there's one of those names that he likes at the early 20s to 22 that he gives up a pick and moves up the board a little bit, because you need to shore up that offensive line. I mean, we definitely need some youth at tackle. So if you want to go in that direction, that works. And you definitely need to plug in an edge rusher here too, as well. Like if you don't go out and get Myles Garrett, you want to go into the draft and get a guy that you can develop. And I think those are probably two of the best spots. And I'm not averse to if he loves a wide receiver in that range. If somebody at 29 catches his eye, I know that's not. I think it's kind of a luxury pick at this point, but I think they do need to get better at wideout, whether that's you plug that hole free agency wise or through the draft. You definitely need some better wide receiving talent here.
I agree 100%. Doug, what are you thinking?
I think probably the edge or the tackle is there. Will you scroll just down a little bit?
Sure.
Also the Siobhan Revel from ECU got hurt during the year, but he's going to start making a lot of noise as we get through this process and gets healthy. It can and can show out for folks. I know this Donovan, the kid from Boston College here. I'm not going to try to butcher his name here on chat, but I know people are high on him, and he'll go higher than I think people expect. This Jack Beck made waves at the Senior Bowl. I'll say this Landon Jackson did too. So there are options here. I think it's probably edge or tackle. I like this kid, Josh Connor. He's really athletic. And so, George, I think if you wanted to do that on this round, we could go ahead and do that.
I agree 100%. Let's draft a tackle because I do feel like the edge class is pretty deep as well. So,
and I've done a couple of these already, and the tackles disappear. They disappear quickly.
I agree.
But also, I could see say AP loves the running back from North Carolina.
Yeah.
And he falls to 29. To me, the one nice thing they did, if they like Lattimore and he comes back healthy next year, to me, one of the things that did was truly allow them to go best player available when their spot comes. And if they think they have, yeah, like if Trayvon Henderson makes it to that far down, like I have a feeling that's one of those they'd run. People love Brian Robinson,
Yeah,
but they need juice. Like
I
you
agree.
could see when we played the Detroit Lions what having a Jahmyr Gibbs does, and people forget, Jahmyr Gibbs was taken in the top 15, top 10 ish.
Yep.
Like
I think it's
those
12.
dudes,
Yeah. Like they moved
12,
up the board to get him. Like I remember the scene in the Lions war room when they were able to acquire him. They were like doing cartwheels because they knew what sort of player he was. I mean, guy scored 20 touchdowns this past season. Like that's an impact. Like I'm not big on drafting big plotting running backs in the top 10 or top 15. But if you have a skill set like Jahmyr Gibbs, or if you have a skill set like a young Austin Eckler, where you can catch a bunch of balls out of the backfield and you can also be a home run hitter in the run game. Like if Genty is that, then I pick him top 10, top 12. Like we were talking about a past draft. I think it was the Mahomes draft. And we were going through the top 5. Like the Jacksonville Jaguars took Leonard Fournette at number 4 overall.
Yeah.
Like that, like if I'm Josh Harris and my GM picks a big bruiser like Leonard Fournette at number 4 overall, like we're gonna have a meeting and like a quick meeting, like as soon as that round of the draft is over in my office. Like that's egregious.
Yeah,
you know
it's
what
egregious.
You don't like if you spend the number 2 pick on Saquon because he's a multi-pronged attack.
He's an offensive weapon as opposed to like a dinosaur type of running back where it's one dimensional.
I can live with that. But like, and I think Peter's going to take the same approach. Like, I don't see him overdrafting a running back. I think that's that. Now I agree. The running back room needs some juice. It needs the paddles put to it. But I don't know if he's going to spend maybe a late first round pick. He'd be willing to. But like, if he's ever picking high, he's not picking a running back high. Like I agree. He's not cut from that cloth.
I think this is the sweet spot in my opinion. And Doug, I'll let you do the final call on the pick. But for me, I think you avoid running back early because I think their running back class is deep. And I think in the second round, second and third rounds, you can start to I think there's Neal. I think the Boise State running back can be found in the third round. I love both of these, like the Ohio State guys, like Trayvon Henderson or Quinton Junkins. I think they both are explosive running backs from Ohio State, big time programs, not scared of anything. Ohio State's been churning out running backs for years and years. I mean, I think you take us to the bank here, Trayvon Henderson. But Doug, what are your thoughts?
I'm fine with that. I mean, again, like you see Cooks up in Buffalo from Georgia, like those guys are difference makers when you have that extra home run speed. There will be guys later in the draft, to your point, that are still going to be there. I like this pick. You know me, the what's his name? The brother of the kid down in Jacksonville.
Etienne. You like Trevor Etienne,
Georgia,
right?
like he's probably a 5th round guy. 4th round, maybe. And so you could do something like that. I like I actually like the tackle here from
me too, William and Mary.
Him and the kid from NC State. I know they talked to the kid from NC State at the Senior Bowl.
Okay.
If you keep going further down just a little bit, this Mason Taylor, you're going to hear a lot of people talk about the tight end. Go back up a little bit. You're going to hear a lot of people talk about the tight end from Miami, and I agree. Like, he's a burner. This kid, Mason Taylor, might be like the 2nd or 3rd best overall all-around tight end. Played with Daniels last year, so that would be interesting. This Tez Johnson is a separator of the highest order. Not a big
he's
guy.
Small. The only knock against Johnson, he's like tiny, but I mean, you like Xavier Worthy's tiny too, but he went in the 1st round because he ran a blazing. I think the fastest. He ran the fastest 40 ever at the combine.
And that's the Tez Johnson comp that I've seen a lot of is Xavier Worthy. We already went running back Devin Neal.
That's what I was going to say. I said Boise State running back. I mistook him for Genty. This guy I was talking about, Devin Neal. You can find him in the 3rd round. He's a great running back too.
He's got juice. Keep scrolling down a little bit.
Sure.
This Trey Harris, if you go back up just a little bit. Yep. Trey Harris is going to make a lot of noise. He was not healthy last year. He's the opposite. That guy is like 6'4", and he's going to run a 4.4. So he has a little bit something different than what we have. Harold Fannin Jr. is going to make a lot of noise. His combine is going to be very interesting. He looked like he caught everything last year, right? I mean, he set records for NCAA. I watched the tape from the Senior Bowl, and his feet looked like he was running in concrete. So I'm curious to see what he kind of looks doing drills.
Mhm.
And then this Deion Walker is one of these 350-pound dancing bears. And if
Okay.
they're not going to find a way to bring back Josh Allen, like, yes, they spent a second-round pick on D tackle last year,
Yeah.
but that kid is not a run blocker
Yeah.
at all. Like, that is not what he's going to be in this. If anything, he's like a
Pass
a
rusher.
super removed, like an Aaron Donald type. He's not Aaron Donald, but it's his get off and explosion is
Yeah.
why they drafted him, not to block the run. So I could see if they move on from Allen this year and had
Trying to do-
designs on moving away from Payne the following year, that D tackle indeed is still a need. And
Absolutely.
more and more teams are starting to get their pressure from the tackles because you're facing guards and not offensive tackles. So I think that will be interesting to watch, like how they plan on building the line. That group that Peters was a part of in San Francisco spent a lot of assets on the D line.
Mm-hmm. Solid for you, gentlemen. Whatever you guys want to do, I'm open for any of that.
I saw some of the Kentucky kids, some of the clips from him from the Senior Bowl. That if he makes it to the third round to that pick,
Mhm.
I think that would be like a just massive steal for them
Mhm.
if they
Mhm.
hadn't made that selection before. So, like,
Mhm.
he's kind of a guy I think that probably vaults up into the second round, late second round, early
I can see
third.
that.
But if he
I can
makes
see
it to 79, I think Peters would seriously consider him.
I
Mhm.
don't, so let's draft him here.
Well, we already have the Ohio State running back, though, right?
No, this Deion Walker from Kentucky.
Which guy?
That's
Here,
what you're
where-
talking about, Cakes, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
keep
sorry,
going, go
I
down
was
just a little
mistaken.
bit. Yep, there
Oh,
it
right
is,
here.
there.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Cool.
Deion Walker. They should hit the. Well, that's okay.
Oh, sorry
I
about
say hit the show more, but
that.
Cakes, what is your thoughts on bringing back Jonathan Allen if they rework his contract? Have you had enough of the two Alabama guys, or is he underappreciated?
I think he's still a pretty good player, but I don't know what it is, man. I think that I think one of those guys has to go. I don't know whether it's Allen or Payne, and I don't know if that's just like a trade chip for Adam Peters. Like he trades maybe Payne for a pick or Allen for a pick and just tries to kind of reinvent that room. Like more time for Johnny Newton, add another young body in there. We obviously know Fedarian Mathis. He was jettisoned, so that was a young pick that was supposed to do some work that didn't work out. I don't know if you can keep running back Payne and Allen year after year. I think
Yeah.
I
Peters
agree.
is
I
going to
agree.
look at that and say he's going to pick whoever he likes of those two, and he's going to find a new home for the other guy, whichever one is more movable, easier to move to another team.
See, and that'll be the interesting thing to me. We haven't seen them have to make a decision like this necessarily.
Yeah.
I would bet you they prefer Jonathan Allen, but Deron Payne's contract is all but untradeable right now. Like it's a huge cap hit on them that there's just not any real need to take because you're not going to do better than Payne. But I bet you secretly they'd prefer Allen.
Yeah, that could be the case. And look, I'm sure it's been squashed, but look, these guys came to blows on the sideline a few years ago. I mean, there might just be simmering like resentment and bitterness between those two that they just have never worked through fully. And maybe it's just better that they get separated in one way or another. And look, maybe one of them wants to find a new spot. I don't know. I don't know how Peters is going to rectify that, how he's going to work that out. But I'd be shocked if he just runs it back with that same interior starting tandem.
I think you're right. And the other thing, George, when we're talking about these first round picks, and it's the reason I think they really could just go in any direction. They've got Marshawn Lattimore. If the idea is really to get them, if the idea is to get Sanders Stroll back into the nickel, which I think he did an admirable job this year, but I think that you could kind of see as that talent level for the receiver was getting better as the playoffs go by. You could kind of see, okay, we get why they want him inside, why
Smaller
he's
guy.
better inside. And
Mhm.
yeah, that's no knock on him. Like he could play outside. I think they think he's better inside. I think it looked like he was better inside this year. So again, like who else is going to play boundary corner this year on this team, next year on the team? They don't have one outside of Lattimore. So like for those people saying cornerback shouldn't be an option, they just picked up Lattimore. Well, yeah, but you got to have two boundary corners and a nickel. Like that's what they play most of the time. So I could see cornerback still being a big free agent need, or somebody that they draft early in the draft to secure them. They need a lot of help on defense. There's no doubt about that. I thought it was interesting, George. You mentioned it uh, earlier. Bobby Wagner was at the press conference today.
Mhm.
So for those wondering if he'll be back next year, I know
Pretty
that doesn't
telltale
mean
sign,
he'll
right?
be back next year, but it would be odd for a guy that without intentions of coming back to go to the press conference by the owner. So I thought that was really interesting.
I
Cakes,
agree.
before we get out of here, what is your one big takeaway from what was an incredible season?
Jaden Daniels is the truth. Like, and thank God the Bears took Caleb Williams at number one.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Caleb
Yeah.
Williams isn't going to get better and succeed, but I'm just glad that the Bears had tunnel vision when it came to the number one pick, because it didn't even seem like they were doing their due diligence as far as anybody to pick outside of Caleb Williams, because we had Herm Edwards on the Junkie show about 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I asked him, I was like, did the Bears reach out to you and ask you about coaching Jaden Daniels? He said no.
Really?
And that kind of surprised me. Like, if you're the Bears, even if you're dead set on picking Caleb, aren't you going to do the research and like
Due diligence, for sure.
Aren't you going to go on a fact-finding mission about Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Onyx, all of those? Like, you should have thick dossier files on all of those guys. It shouldn't just be, well, we have the number one pick, so we love Caleb and that's it. Like that's
Even if
that
it's
is
just to have it in your toolbox for later when you face them
When you're
and play
scouting
them.
and
Crazy.
playing against them. Exactly right.
I'm taking a nugget from a 15-minute interview with Herm Edwards, but
Still,
it speaks to me that the Bears made up their mind. They had their guy, and luckily they bypassed on Jaden Daniels, who he exceeded expectations by a lot. Like, I expected him to be good, not good to the point where he's already one of the top quarterbacks in the NFC, and he led the team to one step short of the Super Bowl as a rookie.
Crazy.
And aside from that weird rib injury that hampered him for 2 and 1/4 games, 2 and 3/4 games, he was spectacular. I mean, I think that's most people's Commanders takeaway from 2024 is that Jaden Daniels was a grand slam pick.
and the fact that he did it in crunch time, on prime time, when it looked like there was no chance possible, like
Yep.
that's what makes me feel like it's repeatable, right?
Yep.
Like it wasn't just that it was fluky. Yes, they were fluky. You're going to win that many games in a row, you got to have some balls bounce your way. There's no doubt about it. But when he had to be great, he was great. And to me, like that's why you can be super excited that it's not something that was just a one-time thing and we'll just be glad, 2012 all over again. That doesn't feel like this. And the fact, Cakes, you're right. They didn't miss any time, and he didn't really take those humongous hits that the Wile E. Coyote hits that everybody had before the draft. Like that wasn't him at all.
And he did all this too with where the talent should be at its lowest point.
I agree.
That's right.
Like the talent should just keep rising and rising. And like the more free agent classes and draft classes that Peter strings together, like this should be the low point on the talent. Now that doesn't mean that they're going to go and win 12 games every year. We know that the schedule gets tougher. There are injuries that you can't account for, but like the talent overall on the roster, this should be the low point. And it's a lot of guys that were brought here on 1 and 2 year deals to kind of see what they had left. Guys like Zach Ertz and Eckler And, I expect Peters to do more of that, to find guys that fit the template of what they're looking for as far as players on both offense and defense. And I just expect the talent to keep getting better and better because, look, they've got a real GM running the show. It's no longer Ron Rivera making the picks. It's no longer Dan Snyder making picks off the yacht. Those days are over, baby. Those days are done.
Yeah.
And that just has to give you optimism going forward.
Much like the sentiment of the fan base, it was amazing to hear how many guys came to this team this year and have said out loud, I fell in love with football again.
Yeah,
Like, for me, that's the biggest compliment you can get to what they've got going on in Washington.
Yeah.
Is guys like Bobby Wagner and Ertz and coaches, and just said, like, we were just kind of plodding along before, and I have fallen in love with this game that means so much to me.
Yep.
And to me, you can't do any better than that.
Yep.
Fellas, I appreciate this. It was great. We're at an hour. I didn't even realize that. So, Cakes, we always appreciate when you come on.
Yeah, last
And
minute.
for those watching, we'll continue each Wednesday with draft coverage. We'll be doing every Friday. We'll be deep diving into the Commanders. Mondays, we'll either talk to some national guys about the rest of the league, or we'll do some mock drafts. And of course, you can always catch Cakes in the morning on the Sports Junkies. Appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me, man. Looking forward to the next one.
That's
Thanks,
right.
guys. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks, guys.